Alright, Barakatha Yahweh, Barakatha Yahweh Shai, Barakatha Yahweh, Barakatha Yahweh Shai. Okay, double honor to the apostles of Great Millstone. Honor to you brothers that be pushing this truth in sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. And double honor to the apostles of Great Millstone that be pushing this truth in sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. So back out here again through the spirit of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. Okay, through the mercy of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, to get into these scriptures, okay, to get into the Bible, the prophecies, okay, and all manner of things, okay, dealing with the scriptures, okay. And that's what Lord's will I'm going to get into right now, okay. Go through the different history relating to the times that we live in right now, the different prophecies relating to the times that we're living in right now, and hopefully some edification is going to come off of that. And you know what, get into it. So let's start off within the book of 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter, and the first verse, because this is the times we're living in right now. Pretty much, okay, you got it to where you got all kind of civil unrest throughout the four corners of the earth. Okay, you got it to where the chips being pushed heavy, that's prophesied within the scriptures. Okay, and all of these things are just, they're moving faster, man. Okay, they're moving faster, and as a result, you're gonna have it to where the end's gonna come faster and faster. Okay, and when we're talking about the end, we're talking about World War III. We're talking about the chip being mass implemented. We're talking about martial law. Okay, we're talking about the so-called New World Order, the attempt of it being put forth and being pushed forth across the whole globe. Because when we go into the scriptures, especially within the book of Genesis, the 25th chapter, what you find out is pretty much there's two nations of people fighting up against each other for rulership of the earth. Now on the one side you got Esau fighting for the rulership of the earth through carnality. Okay, because you read about the blessing of Esau. The blessing of Esau was the sword. Now a sword is inherently a carnal instrument. Okay, you're going to go out there to war with it, you're going to use the sword, and you transpire that into modern day times, and you apply the scripture within the book of Isaiah, the 54th chapter and the 16th verse, how that the Most High created the smith, and that it was going to bring forth an instrument of his work, and that instrument was going to do what? It was going to waste, it was going to destroy. Then we know that the modern day sword is those ICBM nuclear missiles that they're going to be, all of these different countries, they're coming on equal footing within America, against America, because now everybody's getting the technology for these nuclear weapons. Now going back onto the first and foremost point I was making, you got the other side of it, which was going to be Jacob, and Jacob was going to be fighting for the rulership of the earth, right, through the spirit. Okay, now all of those two things was going to be happening right up until the precipice of what we're living in right now, which was the end of heathen rule upon the earth. Okay, you had the Medo-Persians rule, they ruled in wickedness. The Assyrians ruled, they ruled in the wickedness. The Greeks, which the Greco-Romans, they ruled, which is the same Greco-Romans that are ruling right now. That's why you have a thing called the Renaissance period. Okay, well they're ruling right now, and they are of the house of Edom. And whether you had the Medo-Persians or the Assyrians in rulership, you would have had it to where those Greco-Romans, which we know through the scriptures as Edomites, they would have been somewhere there in the mix trying to rule. But the Most High had it to where they was going to have it, the kingdom, the rulership of the earth, in a lot of times that we're living in right now, and then a righteousness was going to be established within the earth. You can read about that, and I might get it within the book of Isaiah, the 60th chapter, where with the Most High is going to have it to where the Israelites, the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, they're going to rule the earth, the heaven that is to come. Because this is heaven and hell for whoever is in rulership and whoever is in slavery. Okay? So let's read the book of 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter. I know I said a lot of ideas there, okay? But hopefully we're going to touch on all of those different ideas through the scriptures, through the precepts, okay? And then ultimately edification is going to come out of that, okay? So this is the book of 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter and the first verse. And it says, "But of the times and seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, but for yourselves know perfectly the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night." And I believe there's another scripture that talks about being circumspect, okay, how you're supposed to be watching the news, and how you're supposed to be keeping your eyes on these different prophecies coming to pass. One of the major prophecies that's coming to pass right now is the integration of human and technology. Okay, you got this thing now of smart technology, smart TVs, okay, smart watches, etc., etc. Okay, now you're gonna have it to where that's gonna transpire onto the mark of the beast. You know about the Bible. What's the mark of the beast? Are you Mormons? All right. So you believe that Miriam was black, because you go into that Mormonism. Okay, they pretty much tell you that They say when you go into that Mormonism, pretty much what you read about is they're basically saying within the scriptures, all of those people that are being talked about, the Israelites, were Edomites. Okay, and the curse that came upon Miriam, they were saying that she turned black. Okay, that was the curse that came upon that. But when you read the actual Bible, the actual scriptures, it's the complete opposite. Okay, and when you look at the movement of people, the migration of people, okay, within that area of land, well, you find out that the Canaanites ruled that period for a period of time, and then the Mosai had it to where the Israelites, they came up into that land and took the Canaanites down. But when you're watching Esau's movies, or you're reading about the Book of the Mormons, or this, that, and the third, they will paint all of those people like they're Edomites, man. Which goes to show you, that prophecy was going to come to pass. When the scriptures tell you within the book of Job, the 9th chapter on the 24th verse, that Esau was going to come about, he was going to cover all the faces of the judges, he was going to remove the landmarks. Well, don't be surprised when the thing happens, man. Now you got it to where if they're making a movie about the Egyptians, they're going to all look like Americans. Okay, they're all going to look like Edomites. If they're making a movie about the Assyrians, they're all going to look like Edomites. Okay? If you go out there into the different museums, however, and you know about time periods, okay, rulerships, kingdoms, okay, you find out all of these people had their own appearance, okay? And this is the thing that Esau has removed from the earth, and the Mosai is going to return that back into the earth, starting first and foremost with the true identity of the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, okay? But getting back onto the scripture now that I was reading, this is the book of 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter, and the 3rd verse, it says, the 2nd verse, it says, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. Okay, so this thing was going to come in a thief of the night. Okay, because people was going to be in a state of comfortability, especially within the Western world, because the Western world is driven off of what's known as gradualism. Now, gradualism is a thing that needs comfortability. Okay, for you to implement something that people are so adverse against, but you want to gradually introduce it, well, they have to be comfortable to the predecessor of that idea, the conceived idea of what they're living in is okay. Okay, so when you're thinking about all of these things that are against the scriptures, okay, Sodom, all of these things that the Mosai said was an abomination, and that's being gradually pushed forward through as the staple, as what's normal. Well, that came about with all of these people having Federal Reserve notes within their pocket. That came about of what? It came about of debt. Okay, and when you read about within the book of Habakkuk, I might as well get it. He talks about woe unto him that is laden within iniquity. Okay, so this thing of gradualism and debt and the comfortability, they all go hand in hand, but all of those things is going to come about to an end as a thief in the night. That's why the scripture says, what it says here, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord shall come as a thief in the night, when they shall say peace and safety. So they was going to be out there marrying. Okay, they was going to be out there buying cars. Okay, the scripture tells you about that. They was going to be given into marriage. They was going to be partying, all of that. And in the end of the Lord, the day of the Lord was going to come about. That's what the scriptures talk about. It tells you that people was going to be comfortable. They was going to be living a so-called cushy life. But it's the illusion of a cushy life, because like I said, this system works off of debt. Okay? And that whole debt system has to come to an end. Because what? Because when you have all kind of money going out and you don't have no money coming in, well, guess what? You're going to have to default. And that's just on a business level. Now you're talking about countries and so on and so forth that have got debt ceilings that keep on getting risen and risen and risen. Well, guess what? There's going to come a point where they was going to have to pay those debts out. Okay, and that's just the same thing applies for America. The same thing applies for Britain. Okay, and all of these different countries that have used this thing of World Reserve banking, because that's how these World Reserve banks work, man. Okay, you have a World Reserve bank set up by these so-called elite banking families, or so-called Jew or whatever, the Rothschilds, whoever you want to call them, the Illuminati. They set up a so-called central bank within your country, and then your government, okay, asks that central bank for money, and as a result, you got it to where you got currency coming into flourishing. Now, when that currency goes into Bob and John's pay slip, well, guess what? That's going to be deposited within the bank. And once that's deposited within the bank, the bank's got legislation to issue out 90% of that by a thing called fractional reserve banking. Okay, and that goes back out into the populace, and the same thing repeats and repeats and repeats to where they say it's about 80% of the actual currency and flourishing is by way of fractional reserve banking. That's why the scripture talks about a woe unto him that is laden within iniquity, because when you got all of that debt mounting up in everybody's pockets, well, guess what? There's going to come a point where you can't pay that. When you take the American government, when you take America's economy, and you really study what's happening in terms of the economy, well, you find out that 12 to 13 to 14 to 17 trillion that they have acclimatized in debt, okay, that they have amassed in debt, rather more. Okay, they're not going to be able to pay that off. Matter of fact, the GDP of America is less than the debt that they have within that country. So what's going to happen? Well, you're going to have to set up a new system, which is going to be by way of what? The RFID chip, the mark of the beast. You're going to have to set up a new system that everybody's going to be acclimatized to, comfortable to, right, and going to be gradually introduced to, so that the old system can be thrown away. Because if the old system was allowed to persist, well, guess what? You was going to have all kind of chaos, okay? And they're going to allow a certain amount of that chaos to come out there. For instance, you go out there in Venezuela right now, that country's all kind of messed up. It's all types of messed up, right, in terms of the economy. But what they're having it to do, they're watching that as a microcosm to see, okay, this is how this debt's going to come about within America, within Britain. And when we introduce the chip as the solution outside of that chaos, everybody's going to be happy to it. But let's not get it twisted. They was going to slowly introduce the chip in your so-called bank card by what you know as contactless payments. Okay, by way of phones where you know as Android Pay or Apple Pay. And then eventually when you go to where you got economic chaos, okay, it's going to be a slow transition, okay, a gradual transition so you can understand from what you have within your hand as the chip, okay, to what you have, furthermore, what you have within your bank card as the chip, to something that only you can use, which is going to be implanted within your hand, which is known as the mark of the beast, which the scriptures tell you that you're not supposed to take. Okay? So now let's read the scripture again. Isaiah the 5th chapter. Then we're going to go to the book of Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, and we go from there. So 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter, and this is the 2nd verse. It says, "For yourselves know perfectly the day of the Lord, so cometh the thief in the night." So like I was saying, hey, there was going to be people given into marriage. There was going to be people that was going to be partying, okay, relaxing, okay, because that gradual end, the gradual World War III, that's really already started. You got Russia, America, okay, Syrians, Iranians all up in the land of Syria right now fighting for territorial, fighting with territorial disputes, a stone's throw away from each other, man. As a matter of fact, when they were so-called taking down ISIS, and I say so-called taking down ISIS because when you really understand what ISIS represents and who they're working for and who arms them, you find out they're just a covert military agency working underneath the CIA. Okay? So when you go to where you got ISIS out there, and you got the so-called Americans, they're trying to take down ISIS, and the Russians trying to take down ISIS. Well, guess what? You was going to have situations where all of those two things was going to collide. And that's why we say World War III has already begun, man. Now you go to where the Israelis, they're trying to take certain territories from Lebanon and Syria and so on and so forth, because they want that whole region and control of that region, and that was again going to cause schism. So this whole thing, you have to remember, Israel is in cahoots with America, in strong cahoots with America. So when something pops up with Israel, like the scripture says, the least of the flock was going to draw them out. Something pops up, something small, like them saying Iran done this, that, and the third to this country, okay, or they did this against the Saudi Arabians. You got the Saudi Arabians right now. They're moving to the agenda of the so-called Israelis, and if the Saudi Arabians happen to have said that the Iranians have done this, that, and the third, well, guess what? Out of that, you can have World War III popping off overnight, man. Okay, because the Iranians got strong ties with the Russians, and the Saudi Arabians and the Israelis have got strong ties with America. So that could be World War III popping off. That's why the scripture says what it says, man. Because you know the day of the Lord was going to come as a thief in the night. Matter of fact, the book of 2 Peter is the 3rd chapter, and I go to the I'll start from the 3rd verse. So 2 Peter 3:3, it says, knowing this first, that they shall come in the last days scoffers. Okay, right? You all right? Okay, I'm all right, man. I'm all right. Okay, this is 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, and the 3rd verse. It says, knowing this first, that they shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lust. So every time when you have this information coming up about the chip, coming up against about World War III, people scoff against that because what? Because everybody's comfortable in the life they're living right now. And what do they say about change? They say change is uncomfortable. Nobody wants to get into a position where they are uncomfortable. That's why they scoff against this truth. And the worst people for comfortability is the Israelites. Because the scripture tells you that these was a plain man, okay, dwelling in tents. So these dudes were just chilling, man. So you're going to bring about that change, okay, when that change was going to come through, when the Lord was going to have it to where Esau was going to transition from a so-called cash society into a cashless society, okay, that was going to bring about a lot of uncomfortability, and a lot of people, when you speak about those different things, was going to be uncomfortable with that idea. Okay, so it says, knowing this first, that they shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lust. So they're walking after their own desires, heart's desires. Like I said, what's the vast majority, especially you Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, you Israelites, what's your predominant lust? Your predominant lust is to ball, man. It's to chill out. You look at so-called Floyd Mayweather or so-called Jay-Z, people that have sold their whole souls, okay, for Federal Reserve notes, things that don't even mean money. What did they sell their soul for? They sold their soul for so-called comfortabilities, man, frivolities, cars, houses, and so on and so forth. Okay? So they're walking after the lust of their own hearts. And the same thing applies for the vast majority of the people upon the face of the earth. They're so comfortable within their cycle of debt. And that's what it is. It's a cycle of debt. Okay, you pay that loan off, you get another loan so you can pay that off. It's just a cycle of debt, and they're so comfortable with that. When you say that change is coming, they was going to scoff against that. Okay? The same way as knowing this first, that they shall come in the last days, scoffers, walking after their own lusts, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they did from the beginning of creation. So when you talk about, especially to these damn Christians, when you talk about the Lord's coming back and he's going to bring about change and this, that, and the third, well, guess what? They're like, that ain't coming. Okay? That's not coming about because you look, this has been the same and everybody's been going on since the beginning of creation. But what happened since the beginning of creations? You had these different empires get set up. The Babylonians got set up. Okay? And when you read the scriptures, what did the scriptures say about the Babylonians? That they was going to reign for a certain amount of period of time. I believe it was about 70 years. And Jerusalem was going to get carried away into them. And what did you have? You had it to where Jeremiah was on the scene and he was prophesying saying, look, Babylon's going to come up against Jerusalem. You niggas are going to go into slavery. And you guys are going to go into that slavery up until the appointed time for that slavery to have ended. Is it 70 years? I forget the exact duration. Okay? But pretty much that's what happened. Okay, and again, people were saying, look, everything continues as it did from the beginning of creation. Because when you understand geopolitical history, okay, what you find out is Babylon was a province. Okay, it was a province since the time of Nimrod. But as a major player, okay, especially when you're talking about Isaiah having prophesied all of these different things. Okay, Isaiah prophesied the downfall of Babylon. Now he was prophesying the downfall of Babylon on two levels. He was prophesying the downfall of Babylon, the Babylon that we're living in right now, okay, which we know through the scriptures to be America, okay, and he was also prophesying about the historical Babylon, where with the Babylonians was going to rise up, not just being a sovereign state, okay, right, an independent state doing their own thing since the time of Nimrod, but it was going to be made the actual ruler of the entire earth, okay, the entire known land at that time, and that happened 200 years before it transpired. So as far as you push that forward into the times that we're living in right now, as far as people are concerned, they're saying, look, this ain't Bible times anymore. Okay, the Bible time, everything has been the same since the beginning of creation. Okay, because they're comfortable. People don't like change, but see, when that change comes, okay, if you get caught off guard, the scripture talks about if blessed are they whom when the Lord comes back, he shall find working. Okay, well, guess what? If the Most High comes and you're in that state of working, okay, building up the house, the tabernacle of David, if you're an Israelite, well, guess what? You're gonna be caught off. You're gonna be caught off guard, and the Lord's gonna destroy you, man. Okay, so let's go to the book of 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter now. And we are now at the 4th verse and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers have fallen asleep, all things continue as they did from the creation. So we've got the understanding off of that. It says, for this they are willingly ignorant. So you really have to be willingly ignorant, especially in the times that we're living in right now. Okay, you go to where the men of Great Millstone, they're all over the place pushing forth prophecies. Okay, pushing forth the word of Yahweh Shem Yahshai. You go to Israelite camp, damn near in every corner in the so-called Western world right now. Okay, pushing forth prophecies. Now you got standards. Okay, you got limitations within these different groups. Where with certain groups, they don't just have the complete understanding of the scriptures. But still, when it comes to biblical prophecy, everybody's pretty much singing the same tune, with Great Millstone being at the forefront of bringing out the information. Okay, you used to have it to where you had Alex Jones. He was supposed to be the man when it came to information until Great Millstone came about. You had Christopher Green. He was supposed to be the guy when it came to information until Great Millstone came about. You had these so-called pastors and preachers. They were supposed to be the ones that was bringing out the scriptures, man. Okay, applying what's happening in today's time and hastening the day and applying the biblical side of things and telling you, okay, this is that prophecy coming to pass. Until Great Millstone came about, they was feeding you lies. Okay, now you go to where you got the brothers all over YouTube pumping out 3 videos each a week. Okay, and the camp videos, just an influx of truth. Okay, the floodgates just wide open for everybody to see, and you still was gonna have it to where people was gonna be willingly ignorant. that's why the scripture says willingly ignorant, because the information, especially the times that we're living in right now, Daniel said that what? Okay, information was going to increase, man. We're in the information age, man. Okay, everybody's got access to YouTube. Everybody's got access to the internet. Everybody, by way of those two things, okay, has got access to this truth. So you really have to be willingly ignorant, okay, not to understand that we're living in the last days of the last days, man. The chips coming out, okay? You got Russia and America out there in different territories ready to get at each other. You got the Israelis, okay, right, basically influencing the decisions of the Saudi Arabians, okay, to come up against the Iranians. So that's going to spew out into so-called World War III. Going to show you that we are not just living in Bible times. This is the last times that the scriptures talks about, man. The last days of the last days, man. Okay? So let's carry on now within the book of 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter. And this is the 5th verse. It says, "For this they are willingly ignorant, that by the word of the Most High the heavens of old stand out of waters was in waters, whereby the world that was then being overflowed with water perished. But the heavens," so you had it to where when Noah was on the scene, okay, he prophesied for a perpetual amount of time, a couple of 100 years, okay? He would say, look, what rain's gonna come down from the sky, and he would have looked like a crazy man, okay? Rain was gonna come down from the sky, okay, this, that, and the third. And the craziest thing about the story of Noah is that only his household was mercy was gonna come upon, okay, him and his sons, okay. So after all of that hundreds of years of prophesying, nobody converted. Nobody looked at their own ways and said, look, actually Noah, you're right, okay. We are living in the wicked days. These are the last days of the last days. For back then, okay, and converted, and ultimately the Most High would have had mercy on them. But the Most High saw it fit that what? Only Noah was the one that came into the understanding, and only Noah and his sons was the ones that had whom the Most High had mercy upon. Okay? Now you transpire that in the times that we're living in right now, really the man in the Lord is going to easier than that, because you might be out here a week, 2 weeks,